Hello and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek. I'm Siobhan Holt, Deputy Editor, and on today's podcast we're going to be asking what it takes to win a PR award. I'm joined by Melissa Clarke, who is the Senior Events Manager at Haymarket Media Group, who oversees many of our awards, including the annual PRWeek UK Awards and the Global Awards. And also on the podcast is David Fraser, founder and Managing Director of PR agency Ready 10, who is not only an experienced industry judge himself, but his agency has won numerous gongs from the PRCA to the CIPR Awards, including several PRWeek Awards, and this year received his first can for the work on the meal campaign for McDonald's. So welcome both. Thanks for joining us.
Hi Siobhan. Hi Melissa.
So we've got plenty to talk about, and I know I've got loads of questions, so I'm going to fire away. So what is it that judges are looking for in a winning entry?
Where to start? First of all, good work.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. It's got to be good, it's got to be novel, it's got to be different. It also has to meet the criteria of that particular category that you're looking at. So you may have the best media relations campaign in the world, but if it's in a social media category, for the sake of example, it's not answering those criteria. And I think that's where people often go wrong. And Melissa, I'm sure, can talk more to this, is putting stuff in the wrong category, or they'll write one entry and kind of carpet bomb a number of different categories. And that's great if it works and it hits the category that you want. But if you enter it in something that's not quite right, then it's kind of something that you have to discount. I can only speak for myself and the rooms that I've been in, but people are looking for something novel, something that has changed the industry or moved on work in that particular category, and looking for a good story. And this is what is quite often missed. It's a bit like a pitch, I suppose, but it's on your award entry. If there's a list of facts, don't make the judge do too much work, I would say, in picking out what the actual story is. Tell the story. Tell the story of why you think this campaign deserves this award, why it's excellent work, why it's pushing on the work in the industry and in the category.
Yeah. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I think David's spot on. I think one thing that we hear from a lot of judges is they're just looking for clarity. They have a lot of awards entries to sit and read through, and they're just looking for a clear and easy way to read through your entry and find all the best information. So the one person put it really nicely and said a clear red thread through your entry. So put your objectives down, get the idea on paper and what comes. So make sure it's something that they can pick out all the key information quickly, clearly. And when they're going through numerous entries, I know that clarity is something that they're really keen on. I think all PR people are really good at storytelling, so absolutely lean on those skills, put your story into good use, but don't go too far into the detail. Don't get too bogged down on the whats and the whys. Like, the people are really keen on the results. People really want to see the outcomes. Like, tell them why it's an award-winning piece of work, not why it's a piece of work you did and why you did it for the client and a years-long backstory. Like, really make sure that you're getting to the point. Make sure you're getting to exactly why this was your best piece of work, and this is why it was great for a client, and this is how, most importantly, it met your objectives. I think judges are really looking for a nice, clear red thread that ties exactly back to the category, the description, and why it's award-winning for that specific piece of work and the category you've chosen.
I think try and put yourself in the seat of the judge and what they have got to contend with. All the award ceremonies are different. All the different awards are different. But if you are judging, you have got probably several dozen entries to go through. So why is this one different? Make it easy to read. Make it entertaining to read. Meet the criteria. Also, don't make any assumptions. You may have someone judging you that is not in your particular area of the industry and doesn't know your client. So if I start an award entry with Queen's Park Rangers wanted to do so-and-so, well, not everybody knows that Queen's Park Rangers are the greatest football team in the country. And I will have to explain who my client is. Not everyone knows who you are. Not everyone knows who your client is. Not everyone knows what they do. So just try and put yourself in the judge's position, what they are contending with, what they maybe do know, don't know, and go from there. And I think that helps you stand a good chance of standing out.
With the entries and the entry format, should they be presenting their own creative style? Should they be more formal? What's sort of the approach that they should take?
I will say, I think most importantly is make sure that you have used the text to hit the criteria. I have to say that we put a full entry kit together for every single award scheme that is run. There is criteria that you need to hit and meet. So just prioritize your text first. Make sure that you've got all the subheadings that are required of you. Make sure you've hit your objectives, your aims, your outcomes, depending on how many sides it would be per awards entry, and then go back and look at the creativity. Like, absolutely, we want to see how it reflects your agency, if it's for an agency piece of work, how it reflects your campaign. You can put it in the right colors, you can put it in the right fonts. Judges like easy, digestible information, and colors do bring that, and pictures do bring that, but not to the detriment of the work that needs to go in there first. So my best piece of advice would be get everything down on paper first, get all the text in there first, and then go back. We're not asking for 10 pictures and a beautiful slide deck that goes with it. 1 picture, 2 pictures, pick the main important bits. You can add supporting material later on for a lot of awards cases, but just make sure that you've prioritized the text first and then go back retrospectively would be my best piece of advice on that.
And then, do winning campaigns have to cover all communication points, do you think? Does it need to be traditional, digital, social?
I think it depends on the category, but generally I would say no. It has to meet the category criteria. It's a good campaign if it does all of those things, but there's a lot of award-winning work that doesn't cover all the bases. And I would say don't pretend that the campaign did something that it didn't. Kind of be proud about what it did, talk through those results. And if it hasn't hit a certain area, don't be apologetic about that, but don't make it up otherwise. I think in this day and age, I don't want to say traditional is less important, but I guess it's less prevalent than it used to be, certainly. I do also think when I read entries, people over-prioritise coverage numbers. I've honestly never been in a discussion in a judging room where the judges are talking about the number of pieces of coverage and kind of totting up. And I think sometimes people imagine judges are comparing one campaign's coverage number with another campaign's coverage number. It's nice to see, it's important, it's a factor, but I definitely wouldn't over-prioritise that over the criteria, the creative, and why this entry should stand out.
Yeah, I think the depth of your entry beats the breadth. So one person said to me once, if you had 3 objectives and you met 2 of your objectives, there is nothing wrong with just talking about the 2 objectives that it met. People spend a lot of time bogged down in the detail talking about the one that it didn't meet and why it didn't meet it, and spending a lot of text and a lot of time talking about something that isn't quite relevant and isn't going to get your point across. Talk about the 2 that you did meet, talk about exactly how you met them and go into a lot of depth with those. And like David has said, just talk about the things that are relevant. Don't make it a tick box exercise. Don't make it you have to talk about every kind of PR in your entry just because you feel obliged. If it's about social media, talk about social media. If it's talk about B2B, talk about how it's just B2B. You don't need to tick every box. Just really sit and concisely think about the ones that are relevant for exactly what you're putting in. I think a really good point that David has made is that people sometimes make one really good entry and submit it into 5 categories, submit it into 10 categories, and it is really obvious to judges when something has just been put into a breadth of categories. If you think you've got a really good piece of work that covers more than one category, make sure that it is tailored. Make sure that it is, if it's for social media, exactly why it's relevant just to those bits and how you hit those metrics. If you're pulling it into a strategy one, talk specifically about the strategy. I think a really big error that people make is thinking, I've got a really good piece of work and I'm just going to put it in everywhere. Like, make sure that you're tailoring your work per category, I think would be really important.
Brilliant. And is there any standout KPIs or metrics that you think judges are looking for in a winner?
I think it goes back to that thing that I said at the beginning. They really want to see work that is different, that is novel, that is creative. And you could say to that, well, but what if it's not in the creative category? But everything is creative, and whatever you're going for, whether it's something that you think is perhaps seemingly more straight or something really out there, there is always an element of creativity. And I think you want to see something different, something that entertains, and something that does hit the criteria. Because I have been in judging rooms where people say this is a great campaign, but just it doesn't hit the particular criteria that this is looking for with this category, and that is really, really important.
I also don't think it needs to be the most amazing campaign that anyone's ever seen on the television or in the newspapers. Like, it really depends on your business and what you're trying to achieve. I read a really interesting B2B piece of work once, and it was about printers. And I'm sure that nobody thought that printers was going to be the best piece of work that anyone's ever done, but it was the passion behind the entry and how they wrote it and how they made it exciting. And they talked about what it meant to their client and what coverage they got and what work came out of exactly what they were asked to do. It doesn't need to have reached every big newspaper in the UK. It doesn't need to be on every mainstream platform. It needs to hit the objectives that you set out to achieve. If it was awareness, how did you get awareness for your client? If it was business goals, have you include those sales metrics in there? I do agree that everything is creative. You can put everything in there to make it really exciting. Make sure it has your passion in there and it showcases your business. And I think one top tip perhaps would be get somebody to read it that doesn't work in PR. Like David said earlier about Queen's Park Rangers, somebody might come back to you and say, I don't know what Queen's Park Rangers is. And that's a really easy way to get a top tip as to how to change your entry. Like, get people to understand, were they excited by printers or whatever it might be? Get a third party to have a look at it for you.
And if anyone is listening that does want to know more about Queen's Park Rangers, I can definitely help them with that. It's a really good point that you make, Melissa, about storytelling. So when that entry about printers is being read by a judge, it's in that specific example, it's very likely they won't know anything. That is where storytelling comes into it. And you also have to bear in mind, quite often your judge is not from your part of the industry. In the creative categories, for example, there could be judges that are in-house, that are head of corporate comms, that are not necessarily and they're judging consumer creative categories, and that's fine. But you've got to bear that in mind in your entry, that you've got to explain and storytell. And the reason why I guess you found that printer entry so engaging was it was told in a really, really good way. I'm guessing you didn't know loads about printers before then, Melissa, but you did after. And it was really good and entertaining and engaging. And it sounds like that's like the perfect recipe for an entry like that. It's got to cut through and tell the story.
Yeah, I'm just wondering though, there's a lot of the comments that have made about the awards is how many there are in the industry. I know we run quite a few, and I know there are other titles that do, and obviously the trade organisations. So how do you balance that then with, like, how do you pick a campaign maybe that you're going to put in in several categories across it, and then also the chance that you might get shortlisted? How do you balance that?
Well, first of all, you do have to cut your cloth accordingly. And I know this is a challenge for many people.
Yeah.
And you've got to really assess what you can enter and what you can't. It's really tempting to say, well, yeah, we'll enter loads into a particular award ceremony, but you just can't do it. And it feels a bit frustrating sometimes, but you do have to have a discipline with that. I think the other thing you have to look at is the categories that are in particular awards shortlist and if that suits your work. And then I suppose it depends why you're doing it, right? Some people are doing award ceremonies because they want recognition for their staff and their teams. Some people are doing it because they want a good night out, in which case pick the one that gives you the good night out. Some, of course, are doing it as perhaps they'll give them a shop window that will lead to better lead gen or potential clients knocking on the door. And I think do your research is what I would say. Do your research around what the awards are that are going to suit you, what the categories are that are going to suit you. And if you can, how the judging plays out with those different awards, because each one is different. The PRWeek one is different to the PRCA one, for example. And if you look at previous year, have a look at previous years, what won, what the judges tend to look for, and then you should get a feel for what you, if you're an agency or an in-house, will be right for you.
And you can always get your feedback, right, Melissa, if you don't get shortlisted.
So we make sure for all of our award schemes at Haymarket that we send feedback out. Some we do it as standard if you're not shortlisted, and some you can request your feedback as you go. But we do make sure that we compile all judges' feedback, because our judges spend a really long time looking at all your entries and putting together really detailed feedback that I think is really valuable for people to have. So if anybody is listening that has entered an award scheme and they do want their feedback, we have all of it. We have everything that we could send you from multiple years. It's all constructive. the judges really want to help you and they really want you to succeed and do better, you're all part of the same industry. So I would strongly recommend that, even if, and I think one thing that people forget to do is, if you have been shortlisted, not to ask for the feedback. I think it's very easy, if you haven't been shortlisted, to go straight in for the, can I have some feedback? I think if you have been shortlisted, or perhaps you've been highly commended, have you then gone back and asked for your feedback? Have you made sure that if you didn't quite get the gold award that you were hoping for, did you go back and get just those one or two little bits of constructive feedback that could really set you apart the next year?
Brilliant. And how do the judges then ensure fairness and objectivity when they're reviewing such a large number of entries?
So we make sure that we have entirely independent panels for all of our award schemes. The judges that we pick will be dependent on the scheme. So if you looked at perhaps a global scheme, we make sure that we have an equal weighting of judges from different places across the world. For all our schemes, we make sure we have a mix of in-house, a mix of agencies, independents, freelancers, all from different sizes of business and different levels, so that we can ensure that there are different views looking at every piece of work. All judges are against a strict published criteria. So all judges are given the entry kit, they're all given the description per category. And we always make sure that we have some really experienced, seasoned pro judges sat on each of the panels, and also give the opportunity to some new people to sit there and learn the ropes. But we are always on hand to answer questions. We give judges quite a long period of time to look through their entries. I always wish it could be longer, to make sure that they are fair in what they're doing. And I think it's a really great industry for that fairness. People want the best work to do well. People want to showcase what's really been great about this year. And I do think that is reflective in the results. And we do make sure that we have really great judging panels that can do that for us.
But the clue is in the word judging. You're being judged. You're not being marked. It's not a GCSE maths test where objectively the answers are what the answers are. That is the game. That is the process. It is subjective. People will disagree. People in the judging rooms disagree with each other. And so there's always going to be an element where you feel that they just didn't get like this campaign well enough. But that is what this process is. You're subjecting your work to being judged by other people in the industry. So, of course, there are going to be occasions where maybe you don't feel you've been given the best go at it, but that is the game. What I will say is I hear a lot, not particularly with the PRWeek Awards, but I hear a lot when people don't win, of them saying, well, they only got it because they're a sponsor, or they spend a lot of money with this publication or organisation, or their client was on the panel or whatever. Honestly, in judging rooms, I've never heard any of this stuff. It is always complete, as fair as it can be. There's no biases that I have heard of that have come to the fore. There's healthy discussion. And actually, I hear a lot of people from what you would consider other agencies, rival agencies, or other brands, rival brands, kind of saying this is a really good piece of work and advocating for it. So those kind of conspiracy theories, in my experience, don't exist. Other people may have other opinions, and they are as fair as possible. And I know Melissa and the people that you work with here in particular put loads of stuff in place to make it as fair as possible. But you are being judged at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are judged in silo as well quite often. So sometimes if an agency sweeps the board, for example, it's because they were judged independently, so they're not linked.
Yes, you mean like different categories.
Yes,
exactly.
yeah.
So if an agency wins 7 on the night, they're being judged by 7 different judging panels who don't know what the other 6 are doing.
I would say make it really easy for your judges to pick your work to be the best, because like David says, when you sit in the room, there might be one judge that says, oh, but they just didn't show me this. That might be the difference between you being shortlisted and winning, between high commendation and winning. Like, make sure that every single point is included in bold, highlighted, larger than the rest of the text. Make it really easy and make sure you've hit every single point in a way that it can be pulled out in an easy and concise way for the judges to say, yeah, they've definitely ticked every single box.
And are there any other common mistakes you see from agencies on award entries, or anything that's an instant red flag?
Oh, I was having a little think about this. I think if you are forgetting any visuals, I think we do see some where it is just a wall of text, and that can be really overwhelming for judges, and it can be very difficult. If you've got 2 pages of Arial size 11, I think you can't pull out some of that information. So I always say champion your bold, your italics, your pictures, make sure that's all in there. I think entering the same piece of work into multiple categories without changing it, I think, is a common mistake. Including too much about perhaps the drama of the campaign rather than the outcomes. I think there's a lot of things that happen inside your PR agency that are probably really exciting and really fun when you're working there and you're in the day to day, but to a third party, have you conveyed it in a way that would make sense externally, or are judges really just looking for the results and the outcomes? Like, are you overwriting? Are you over explaining? Does it need all that additional detail, or could you cut it down a little bit? Somebody said to me once, explain it like you're talking to somebody in the pub. Your judges are people. Like, they're not these big scary figures that, you would never meet. Like, these people, they're your peers. People in the PR industry know one another. Just write it like you're talking to them. It doesn't have to use the biggest words or the most clever explanations. Like, get to the points, convey your point really well, and just make sure that you're just not convoluting it too much with information over your outcomes.
Tell you what I see a lot, which is not in contradiction to Melissa's point of too much detail, but sometimes people don't actually explain what they did. And you're like, what? They will start with, we changed the face of printers in the UK, and then jump to results. They're so close to it. I feel like people are so close to it and have explained this in a pitch or a case study hundreds of times. They kind of are making an unconscious assumption in their entry that everyone else knows what you're talking about. Actually explain what you did. Not, it was great, these are the results. Like, what did you do? What were the steps? What was the campaign? Not over-explain, to Melissa's point, but quite often that is missed out, and you're reading an entry and you think, what did you actually do? Yeah. I can't work it out.
What advice then would you give to a smaller agency that's maybe competing in categories against larger ones? For example, you guys entered Cannes for the first time.
We did, and we're much smaller than probably the majority of people that enter Cannes, but we felt with the McDonald's campaign, the meal, that we had a really good chance with it. So I think the first thing is cut your cloth accordingly. Again, they are hugely expensive. Not just entering them, but the experience of Cannes itself, which is a big part of that kind of entry process. The second one is do your research. We really tried to understand what we were getting into. So we read entries from where we could. We read previous year's winning campaigns to try and understand. We looked through the categories. We tried to understand what things were on what day and what we might stand a chance with. And if you know someone that's been or has experience, try and tap them up. We were very fortunate. Around the all-agency team at McDonald's is Leo Burnett, who we work really closely with. They're quite experienced at things like Cannes, so they were really kind with their time. They told us about how the whole process works, what we should enter, what we need to submit as far as an entry is concerned. And so we felt that was giving us the best chance to kind of talk to people that have been there. If anybody's thinking about it for next year, because there's been some great work that's come out of the industry, when the time comes, feel free to ask me and I'll try my best to tell you the sort of do's and don'ts, if that's the right phrase, of how to try and tackle that, because it's pretty overwhelming and pretty daunting and pretty massive. Obviously,
it's very expensive, but do you think that smaller agencies should be putting more work into Cannes, or do you understand why they don't?
I totally understand why they don't. So we are 10 years old in April, and this was the first time that we've entered it. And it was a huge expense for us. We tried our best to do it on the cheap as far as Cannes is concerned. You know, we stayed at a Holiday Inn about half an hour out. We sort of flew in and out for when we thought we were going to win and so on. But it is a big expense. I think you need to think very carefully, and it goes back to the reasons why you're entering. We enter to kind of showcase our work, to show up, to kind of back our staff and the teams on it. And we also hope it gives a shop window for us. It was our assessment that this was the year to go for it. But like with all award ceremonies, you've got to feel that your piece of work is really worthy of winning that.
Would you say you need a big name like McDonald's to do it or not?
I can't say that because it's the only one we've entered and it was in a big
enough.
name. What I will say is there was quite a few this year, particularly from overseas, that were not particularly huge names or really interesting names, if that's the right way to talk about it.
I know what you mean,
So,
yeah.
there was a great
Well-known,
campaign
yeah.
for Indian Railways, and obviously the Indian Railways is a massive brand because they transport millions of people a day, and so they've got quite a big infrastructure. But they won a campaign for teaming up with the lottery in India in a way to encourage people not to fare dodge and to buy a ticket. So you bought a ticket and you got a lottery ticket, I think the campaign was. You wouldn't have thought something from Indian Railways would kind of sweep the board at an international creativity festival, would you? But it kind of maybe goes to show that if there's the idea there and it's the right thing, I think it can travel quite far.
The most recent Cannes Festival saw several campaigns withdrawn over manipulated content and some questionable claims. And there's been, some serious concerns raised over the role of AI and truthfulness in award submissions. And I know that Cannes Lion itself has looked at some of its criteria. How are competitions trying to combat that, do you think?
So since Cannes, it's been a huge point of conversation, something that we've thought about a lot, something that's really important to us. And AI is something that we've added into our entry code of conduct going forward for all award schemes. So I had a little look at it just to make sure I was saying just the right thing. We do acknowledge that it's something that's growing and developing and something that will be used in award entries and has been used in pieces of work. We do expect our entrants to indicate clearly where AI has been used. We're not saying don't use it. We're not saying shy away from it, but just make sure you're being really clear, really open with the judges and people reading your work that that's what has been included. And we do say that if work enters has been fabricated in a way intentionally or unintentionally that hasn't been declared, then we do have the right to disqualify entries. We're not saying don't do it. We're not saying don't include anything that might be relevant to your piece of work, but you have to have transparency. You have to be really clear with what you're doing and how AI has been involved, because otherwise you do end up in places like we did with Cannes, and that's something really important to us to make sure doesn't happen again and something that isn't reflective of our award schemes. So we have made sure that it's in our entry code of conduct going forward for all schemes, and I know that other industry schemes are looking at it in a similar way.
Have you noticed this as well in some of the criteria already?
I think the principle of don't lie, don't exaggerate
Yeah.
is just the one to stick to. And that's kind of always been the case. I mean, we're talking about AI and manipulation through AI, but before the prevalence of AI, the odd person would be manipulating their results through other means, and that would have been discovered then. I think it really goes back to a point Melissa said earlier. Don't try and flex your campaign to fit every single criteria. If you haven't done something, if there isn't something that you haven't necessarily ticked off, we'll just concentrate on the other stuff that you have. I think now AI is going to be harder to manipulate. Everybody is so hyper aware of it, even in kind of the text. If your text has gone through AI, it's not a stigma. Just if you've created stuff with AI, just stipulate it, but just tell the truth.
Yeah, don't fib.
Simple, really, isn't it?
Exactly. Are there any other trends or innovations that you've noticed in recent award submissions that have impressed the judging panel, either of you?
Ironically, I think AI and image generation and what AI can do does impress. That is interesting now. That's part of our campaigns. Just needs to be properly attributed. Quite often people talk about, was it Maybelline? And there was a makeup brand that kind of put their brand on a tube train, and that was very openly AI, and people often talk about that and often cite that. So I would say on the flip side, it is the emergence of AI, so long as it's kind of addressed in the right way, it's ever more part of our clients' briefs, of our briefs, of the responses that we're giving. So there's sort of no getting away from it. I also think naturally, going back to what I said before, there is a move away, but not a complete abandonment of traditional media relations. It's kind of a lot of what people would expect. There's social and digital is baked into a lot of campaigns now, of course, nowadays as well, and that's only going in one direction.
Yeah, I think it's beyond just your traditional coverage metrics. Like David said, it's not what the judges are talking about in the room per se. They're not just looking at those numbers anymore. People are looking at those business-led metrics. How are you going back to your objectives? Search, ROI, effectiveness data, like how are all those things also impacting your campaign and your results? How are you adding all of those additional metrics in there? I think judges are looking for different ways of looking at things, out of the box ideas, different ways of presenting your data. What have you achieved that others haven't? I think, like I say, with AI, like you couldn't have thought up the Maybelline idea. I mean, nobody knew it was there until you could see it right in front of you. And I'm not saying that everything needs to be a piece of AI and everything needs to be the most exciting out of the box idea, but perhaps you put into your awards entry what could be innovative, come up with something new, add some innovation into your results and work that we've not thought of yet. Stand out from the crowd, I think, would be a good piece of advice for that.
And then we've talked a lot about like specific campaign-led categories. What about if you're going for, say, an agency of the year or boutique agency of the year or large agency? What top tips would you guys give?
Somebody said to me the very first time we entered New Agency of the Year that you have to prove why you're moving the industry on. What is it that you are doing that is contributing to the industry, that is different, that is novel, that is really moving things on? That's the first thing. And the other thing is, in the particular year you are entering, why this year? Why is this year different to previous years? What have you done in the last 12 months that has really set you guys apart? And there's hundreds of great agencies out there. There's hundreds of really nice places to work. Or this applies, of course, to in-house teams as well. But why are you the top one, and what have you done that's different? And that's what you really need to focus on and sell in those categories. I think people have a misconception that if they've had a good year in terms of kind of performance and profitability, that will set them apart. But the truth is, so have dozens of others. So it doesn't set you apart. It's a hygiene factor in judging, if I'm brutally honest. Like, it's very important. It will be important to you that you've performed well, that you've been profitable, that your fee income has increased. But beyond it being there on the entry, it's actually not particularly what judges want to hear. And I think agencies do sometimes over-focus on that. What judges, the ones that I've judged, really want to hear about is your work, the campaigns that you've done, your people experience, and what you're contributing to the industry.
Would you agree with that, Melissa? You obviously take part in the PR Week bus, as I call it, where you go around various in-house teams.
Someone called it the gold bus, so I like to call it that. I think there are 4 key pillars that we brief the judges on and say to look at, and they're obviously more in depth than this, but the financials, talk about why it was a great year financially, include some of those metrics in there, the work for your clients, the industry impact, the culture, make it feel like a place that the reader or the person sat in the presentation would like to work. Make them go away going, I would love to work there. Or when it was my first job, I would love for my first job to have been there. Or how could I get involved in a business like this? Make them feel like it's a great place to work. And then, like David said, and I truly do think that people miss out on this a lot. Why this year? Every single person that you're going up against has had a good year, had a great year. They haven't submitted their work because they've not had a good year. So make yours the standout year. Tell people, was it your best financial year ever? Or did you develop 20 staff into all getting really fantastic promotions? Or, I don't know what it might be, but just find something that really sets you apart from everybody else and give your judges a key takeaway. Make yourselves memorable. Make sure people go away thinking, yeah, that is the agency of this year, whatever year it might be. If it was for 2025, make sure that they say this was for 2025, not 24 or 23, or it's not agency of the last decade or agency of the last 3 years. Make sure you really stand out and make sure that you truly do believe that it is your year. I think sometimes people can enter stuff just because they think that's what they need to be doing. But, there's an agency of the year for UK schemes, there's global schemes, there's specific ones for different sectors of the industry. Make sure it reflects what you want to do and what your business wants to achieve. Do you want to be seen as the best agency in corporate affairs? Do you want to be seen as the best agency across Europe? Like, what is it that you want to get out of it? And make sure that that's really conveyed in your either PDF or pitch or whatever it is you're putting together.
The only other thing I was going to make a point about was work that's really, really good but isn't award worthy. And it can be quite hard when you're in it. You feel you've done such a fantastic piece of work. This has to win awards, but sometimes there isn't a category for it, or sometimes you maybe it was a really I mean, Melissa might tell me different. I don't think pure play newsroom campaigns do that well in awards, but that doesn't mean it wasn't good work. It just may not be right for that particular award, and sometimes it can be quite hard to take if you're the kind of the industry owner or the agency owner, I beg your pardon, or you're head of your department in-house and you really want this work recognised. But it doesn't mean it wasn't good work. It just means maybe there wasn't a space for it in that particular awards, and that's okay.
Do you agree, Melissa?
Yeah, I do. I would never say don't submit your work, but I do agree with David in really thinking about where it would fit best. I do agree with David. I understand that people want to be seen in certain award schemes or win certain categories, but does that make sense for your business and what your work is doing? Does it make sense to review a different scheme or something more specific or something more tailored? Like, don't just put things in for the sake or because you feel like you need to be seen doing something or doing what everybody else is doing. Take some time as a business, as an agency, to review what your objectives are as a business, what you want your outcomes to be. And like David said earlier, do you want the one with the big party, or do you want the one with the live judging, or what is it that you want it to be? And go really tailored, go really bespoke on what you want out of it. And I do understand that not everything can win every single time, and I would love to award everybody as much as possible, but just reflect on everything that we've said and make sure you've put your best foot forward and make sure that your best pieces of work are in there. I was thinking about any other advice I had, and I would say one thing is get somebody involved in the judging process. Get somebody in your team, in your business agency, whatever it is, involved in some kind of judging in some form. Get them to read some PDFs, understand how other people are doing work. Could they come and see a presentation? I know not all opportunities are available to everybody, but I just think all big agency heads should have had an opportunity to do some judging somewhere where they can get their eye across some other work. Like, it is great, like David said earlier, to speak to people about Cannes and people that have entered, but get a judge's view. Like, it's one of your easiest and best opportunities to see what others are doing and what winning work might look like.
Well, sadly, that's all we've got time for today. But as Melissa says, you can nominate yourself to be a judge for any of the PRWeek Awards, so please do keep that in mind. And also, please do visit prweek.co.uk to get your entries in for this year's awards. We've got several schemes, from Purpose Awards to the PRWeek Awards, Global Awards. There's loads on there, guys, so please do have a look. You've got no excuse now. And thanks so much for joining us today, Melissa and David, and thanks to you for listening. And until next time, goodbye.